Welcome to Prime Suspects. Alongside Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr., I'm your host, Matt Landis. Adam, many would say the divisional round is the best football weekend of the year. Bills, Broncos, and Rams Bears certainly delivered. How did the results across Prime Sports and BetChrist live up to the billing?
We actually had a pretty good weekend. I mean, thankfully the Bears topped it off last night. There was a lot of Patriots money rolling into that late game, and they did the job. But yeah, all in all, Saturday was really good results. Sunday was decent results, and we'll take it. We'll take it. We'll move on. We'll chalk it up to some green, live to fight another day. So, I mean, the playoffs have been pretty extraordinary games, I think. I don't remember these kind of, back and forth, so many games and right down to the death that they've been. But it's been a lot of fun watching these games.
And a couple of games that weren't thrillers this weekend still may have had some live betting ramifications. Sam Darnold's oblique injury being a major question mark leading up to 49ers Seahawks, and then CJ Stroud's continued struggles, a major factor from the outset in Texans Patriots. So Adam, how was the live betting in particular for those two matchups, and anything else noteworthy from the rest of the slate?
Yeah, I mean, that sort of happened sort of all week. It was six and a half, some 7.5, back to 7. It really looked like it was going to get to 6.5 again, and then it just held up, and obviously news was that he was going to be good and healthy and whatnot. As for Stroud, I mean, we were forced to watch a Barcelona soccer game because couldn't find NFL anywhere in any Irish bar or anything for the first part. So we're watching box scores and, it went, well, there's been 4 interceptions. And then, if they could have just kept the ball on the right side instead of passing to the wrong players, it might have been one hell of a game. But, it is what it is, rough one, but you kind of sort of have those feelings about some of these younger players and the positions they're in and whether they show up and whether they don't. That's how it goes. But did feel like that New England line was light, did actually have a good weekend punting, but yeah, we needed the Texans, so I ended up having to cheer the Texans and didn't get the money on that game, that's for sure.
All right, well, from setting the stage for a conference championship Sunday in the NFL to a different kind of conference, Adam, you're joining us today from Barcelona, where you're attending the International Casinos Exhibition, also known as ICE for better or worse. What made the event appealing enough to bring you to Barcelona on short notice? How's your experience been since arriving there? And what are you most looking forward to over the course of the conference?
It's a lot different than when I was here 9 years ago. Last time I came to ICE, I was on the tarmac in Jamaica. Falcons had just scored again to go up 28-3. I took off in the air. I landed on, as I was looking for my bag, saw that Tom Brady had won the MVP, thought, oh shit, this must have been a close game. He must have really challenged the Falcons at the end. Little did I really realize that my bankroll and wealth management planner had just knocked off a solid amount while in the course of that flight. But yeah, haven't been back since. It's great London weather here at the moment. But this thing is huge. Like, I don't know, 6-7 football fields of gaming and whatnot. Not what I was expecting. Got lost multiple times. Ton of payment processors. It seems like moving money's the number one priority these days, or a challenge. But yeah, like someone said something about 65,000 people were at the event today, which is just nothing like, makes G2E look like a little kick show down in the country sort of thing. But I don't even know what they're all doing here, in a sense of it's sort of the same stuff like we've had for many, many years. A lot of casino stuff, which, starting to look a little closer at as we move forward in some spots. But it's a lot of stuff. It is overwhelming. It is like walked in, okay, had 5 or 6 meetings, managed to screw it up completely where Hall 1 was one meeting, then I went to Hall 5, and then I had to go back to Hall 1. I didn't have my step counter on today, but there was definitely 10,000 plus. But it's a lot of stuff, and I'm, trying to get lost in the mix of everything that it is, but it's the same how am I trying to say this? It's the same old stuff, maybe with a little polish on it. Exchanges are now prediction markets and, all those kind of things that they have in the business now.
Old wine in a new bottle, as Joe might say. And Joe, on that note, we'll bring you into the fold. No stranger to the industry conference circuit yourself, although you're joining us from home today, as our viewers on YouTube and Spotify will be able to see. Joe, thinking about the divisional round weekend that was, what were your top takeaways?
It definitely, whereas a week ago, I kind of felt like nobody was really distinguishing themselves. You just kind of have to think that Seattle, after that ass whooping that they put on the 49ers, you can see why they're doing so well in the futures markets, and why right now, even though they're listed as, we have them listed as a 5-point fave on Betcris, and then they're listed as a 5.5-point fave on DraftKings and elsewhere. A quick note, wanted to check what they were listed at on FanDuel, and FanDuel has closed down my account again. I guess I shouldn't have done those Adam data plays there a couple of weeks ago. But, you can definitely see why they are firming up so much, and have been really since the playoffs started in the futures markets. And you know what? Guess I just have to eat it when it comes to the Rams. With the team that I didn't think that they had really the season that would have made them a solid number 2 in futures. But the fact that they were able to walk in there. Now, I guess some would say they maybe let Chicago make a little too much of a game of it. But the fact that they went in there, Chicago still covered, but only by a half point. But to win there in Chicago in those conditions was pretty impressive. So I am looking forward to seeing the NFC Championship game. But, watching Seattle's defense, what's the under at right now in that game? That's definitely where I might be looking to see. Like, if Seattle's defense shows up, I don't see how the Rams are going to be able to, if they struggled that much against Chicago's defense, even with the elements, I don't see how they're really going to be able to put any points on the board. Over in the AFC, I know everybody's conceding right now to New England because of what happened to Bo Nix's ankle, but I thought it was really funny that Nick Foles, Philadelphia legend, took to Twitter this morning to try and cheer up Broncos fans and remind them that New England has historically struggled against backup quarterbacks when it came to championship play. Still has that big Nick magic going on there. So that'll be an interesting game. I just don't see, in that case, Foles, when he came in for the Eagles that year in the postseason, he had a few games run up. Taking your first snaps for the year in the AFC Championship game. Sounds like a great movie, doesn't it? But, right now, where's that at? That's at, New England, only minus 5.5. That's crazy. I don't know. It seems like it's going to be the easiest setup for New England to walk into a Super Bowl ever. So it's interesting. I did spend some time, just as a quick note, watching the markets on Kalshi this past weekend. Watching the numbers change on Polymarket was insane. There's no way that in-game you can hit a solid price because the price is changing every 5 microseconds. So you don't know what you're betting on. You're just button pushing. It was strobing so much, I think they ought to have a warning sign for epileptics on there, that the flashing of the numbers may cause seizures or something like that. And then I thought it was funny. Kalshi essentially did their own cell phone and social here earlier today. I don't know if you saw it, where they synced the bar graph or the graph on the pricing for their game to the game film of when Chicago scored that late touchdown to send it to overtime. And they're like, look at the way the price has jumped on Chicago. It's like, well, then it's not really much of a prediction market so much of it's a reaction market now, isn't it? But, maybe that's just being a little too insidery and bitchy on my part. But, all in all, coming out of this weekend, there's probably zero value to be found on Seattle or anybody else. I'll be really interested to see, assuming that it will be Seattle and it will be New England, what the spreads were going to be on that. I'd be interested to find out if our friend Adam and his team have already started having some early discussions about what those numbers might be like for next week.
Adam, anything to add on look-aheads to potential Super Bowl matchups now that the conference championship slate is set?
No, the only comment I have, bet and watch NFL. Do not live in Europe. These times that these games are on are absolutely brutal. A 3 a.m. game followed up by a 1:30 and then college championship tonight at 1:30 a.m. Yeah, not the place for American football night games.
It's funny that you're at ICE. I watch the Eagles win their first Super Bowl championship on a laptop watching a streamcast, a pirate streamcast at that, in London once I got there for the ICE show that year. I actually, in order to keep real-time connection to the game, because the streamcast was, I think, it seemed like it was delayed by about 2 minutes, I had my Don Best live odds app on my phone. So watching the in-game odds, I kept more of a sense of what was happening during the game. It was faster than anything else, either the stream, the widgets, the data widgets, any of those things was watching the in-game odds. So there really is a point to learning how to read the matrix there, kids, since the betting markets adjust to that news much faster than anything else. But yeah, you're right. Anybody who's like a serious NFL bettor or fan in Europe, they're quite the night owl.
Well, the NFL playoffs, not the only thing heating up these days. Baseball's hot stove also reaching a fever pitch with recent headlines including Kyle Tucker to the Dodgers and, much to Joe's dismay, to the Mets. Joe, what do you make of the latest in Major League Baseball free agency and the Dodgers continuing to stockpile top-tier talent?
It's starting to look like top-tier club soccer in that the haves are just, if you have enough money, you can ignore that luxury tax, which is exactly what the Dodgers and the Mets are doing right now. And you can just stockpile and you just corner the market on talent. Now, I would say the Dodgers have been a lot smarter about acquiring that talent. And it looks like the Mets acquiring Bo Bichette just seemed to be a knee-jerk reaction. And if anything, maybe half of the decision was making sure that the Phillies didn't get him. But, baseball continues to go this way, and they don't do more to kind of clamp down on this other than the luxury tax. You could see a world where the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees, the Phillies, the Red Sox, the top revenue teams like that just establish like their own tier, at least when it comes to player acquisition, and starts to make the game a little unbalanced. But on the Bo Bichette thing, the Phillies' answer to that was after Bo signed with the Mets, was the Phillies' big announcement was that God love the guy, JT Realmuto, best catcher in baseball, but sign him to another 3 years. It's like, as I said online, it's like coming home expecting steak and getting meatloaf instead again. So not a whole lot of joy in that one.
All right. Well, Adam, with you at ICE, we will stay on theme. A lot of industry topics going to come front and center this week. We'll know at the end of the week what the dominant themes were coming out of ICE. It's a safe bet at this point that AI will be at or near the top of that list. And we had sportsbook supplier Kambi come out and say that nearly half of the markets in its network are priced using AI, 48% of all bets in 2025, and that is up substantially from 28% in 2023. Adam, how would you describe your point of view when it comes to using AI and automation in sportsbooks, and how extensively are you leveraging it across Planet Tech?
So the headline really said to me, this is why Kambi's product is so shit, because we actually don't use math and models to build our product. I don't know what they're calling AI, but many, 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 many moons ago, pricing was done through algorithms. Then we called it machine learning. And then we called it neural networks. And then it was the magical AI. So, they're all subsets of each other and AI and whatnot. So for someone to come out and say we're almost 50%, that is, I imagine, shockingly embarrassing in a sense of if you price up a market, an NFL game, and it has 100 props, 100 props are priced up with AI. Whether it's an algorithm, machine learning, all the way through live, the only thing potentially that you're pricing up is putting in that first number that a trader is or an odds maker has put together. When it comes to live, it's data and numbers and machine learning and neural networks and AI. The whole thing's done like that. So I do know that there's people and there's traders that sit in parts of Europe and the world that have really sore fingers because they just tap in and punch into some of these systems, manually copying markets, hundreds and thousands of markets from other sports books that actually have the magical AI stuff and build these numbers internally and through their models. But yeah, I know the industry's often hard up for headlines, and companies that are public need to sort of say, hey, we're still here, we still exist, as they try and get that share price back up. But yeah, that one is not something that I'd be owning up to, with the ability that, again, AI, I know everyone loves to call it this magical stuff that's just a culmination of lots of other things that have led us here. But that feels like pretty bad stuff if they're only doing about 50% of their markets through automation and machine learning, etc.
And Joe, a big talking point when it comes to AI in the space from an operator perspective has been personalization, being able to cater betting menus on a player-by-player basis. And while that's gotten a lot of talk, it seems like there's no shortage of bettors saying that the opposite seems to be true in their experience. the interfaces being static, if anything. So considering all of this, how would you describe your perspective on the use of AI in the space, especially with regard to personalization, and whether or not personalization over time stands to benefit books or bettors on a greater level?
It's funny. I think personalization and pull out, a little more broadly than from our little cottage industry of sports betting here. Personalization is a dual-edged sword. And we're hardly the only industry that, talks about, personalizing results for players so that people get exactly what they want. What does that sound like? Well, that sounds exactly like Google's business model, doesn't it? For like the last 20 years. So in some ways, you have to ask yourself, how can it be that we are this far along with, the majority of sports betting having moved into the digital realm, and we're still talking about personalization so people can see the markets that they want when they first log on, instead of like you go to some places, and unfortunately sometimes this is with our brands as well, you log in, I'm an American, and the first thing I see instead of that night's NBA games or this weekend's NFL games or the baseball games or something like that is, wow, look at that heater in the Bulgarian Premier Soccer League that's going on between, I don't know, Sofia and Team Dracula. So in a lot of ways, and that's not just us. I mean, I guarantee you go on to 365, FanDuel, DraftKings, any of those guys right now, and that's like the first thing. Why? Because they're trying to get hot in-game stuff up there now for people to hit, right? And so the fact that we're still sitting here 20, 25 years in to the industry is largely overbalanced into digital, and we're still talking about giving people what they want when they first log in. It's kind of embarrassing when you compare us to the rest of the digital economy. Having said that, there's also, and we know not just from ourselves, but from the industry and the world at large, is like, well, how much do you really want vendors getting into your personal stuff? As a default, anytime I load an app onto my iPhone, I immediately make sure I hit the ask not to track part, opt in. So I don't want apps following me around. I don't care how much they want. Hey, we just want to make everything much more relevant to you. It's like, I don't want them following me around. I'm not doing anything wrong, but I just don't want them following me around. I don't want the apps knowing too much about me. When you think about, if you take like the best case for AI, and what it might potentially do, besides, I don't know, kill us all and enslave us. Think of a world where, personalization is more than just giving you the markets that you're interested in. Think of how you could just basically have the perfect competitive mirror for every person who logs in. And the reason why I say that is, bear this in mind. In our regulated markets, sportsbook operators are under no obligation to give everybody the same markets or the same prices. They can just show them what they want to show them. We can mark people up. We can mark people down. We can add points to the spread. We can give people all sorts of differentiation there. We might only show them the markets that we think that they don't have an edge in. If you really wanted to take AI to its nth degree in our industry, think of it as like the toughest player that you'll ever be on the other side of the table from. So I'm kind of glad to hear what Adam's saying about Kalshi beating its chest about 50% of our markets has still not made it past the algorithm, or I'm sorry, can be. I can't keep track of these stupid names. These stupid meaningless K names. But they've only managed to repackage their algorithm, machine learning, neural net, AI, they've only managed to repackage their wine into 4 or 5 different bottles, but it's still the same shit. And I bet you there's still the same groups out there that know the gaps in their software where they're taking advantage of it, because there's syndicates out there that's all they do is they sit back and they know where the lags are. They know where the gaps are, and Genius and Sport Radar and all of these guys, and they just cash in. So the fact that they haven't improved it with this AI revolution supposedly going on all around us is actually, I don't know, in some ways encouraging if you're the kind of person who thinks AI might not necessarily be at least the player's friend. It could be the operator's friend if the operators invest at a very, dare I say, sinister level of being able to match up against players on an individual basis. In a lot of ways, players might be bitching and moaning that, oh, I don't have my favorite NBA bets or Major League Baseball bets or Premier League bets that greet me the first time I come in, probably in a lot of ways, that means there's more opportunity for them in the jungle than if they're just being served stuff like that right away. When you want to go out and find your own edge instead of letting Fan Kings tell you what's on the menu today, I don't know. Maybe I would. But then again, FanDuel shut down my account.
All right, let's take things home this week by bringing this full circle, focusing back on the NFL and Conference Championship Sunday. We'll go game by game, getting Adam's thoughts on openers and early betting market activity and Joe's analysis as well. Kicking off in chronological order with the AFC title game, New England at Denver. The wild card here being Jarrett Stidham, Denver's backup quarterback, elevated to its starting quarterback after Bo Nix's ankle injury. Adam, how did you and your team factor this in to your opening number, and how has the market responded early on in this week's betting cycle?
Well, the market's reacted by being all over the Denver Broncos. Overall, there is like 61% of the money's on the Patriots, but we've got like 91% of the master money's on the Broncos. It opened 6.5, went to 6, went to 5.5, quickly went to 5, but it's only been going one direction from the punters that really know or are meant to know how to play this game. But yeah, they're all over the Broncos right now, and totals of 42, bit of money on the over. But yeah, there's faith in the Broncos right now.
How much, if any, thought went into this on your end, wanting to take early Broncos money to get ahead of a potential tidal wave of public support for the Patriots later on? Or is this just you trying to set a more objective number and this is the way it's netted out so far?
Yeah, it's really just coming up with a number that you think is ballpark. Hopefully gets, a few bites here and there. And generally you have a certain group that are just taking the favorite, the money line, there's some parlays and stuff like that. But even the money line, it's 81% on the Patriots, yet 72% of the master money's on the Broncos at the money line. So there's some insights to what this backup is, being on the road, mile high, all those kind of things, thinking that maybe the Broncos can pull something out here and get through this week.
And Joe, when I first saw a price for this game last night, it was Patriots -6. That struck me as quite high. I'm guessing you would have an opposite reaction. I felt like if not for CJ Stroud, we might be having a similar conversation to a lesser extent on Drake May based on his performance in 2 playoff games. But tell us what you're looking out for when it comes to Patriots Broncos.
It's interesting. Those artificial or synthetic, I say, stats. I'd really be interested to see what wins above replacement are for Bo Nix, because I'm actually surprised that the numbers only move that much. Bet Chris is down to what, minus 5 right now, and then Fan Kings are -5.5. So for it to only drop that much, and then that the Masters are so heavy on it right now. And then you also said the Masters are coming in on the over as well.
On the over and the money line for the Broncos.
That's amazing to me. Well, I mean, who knows? Maybe the guy is the next Nick Foles. Who knows? But obviously, I think that what you were saying, Matt, about going to Denver to play this time of year, it's a tough environment. And certainly, the Bills found that out. They went in there as, small road favorites. And, I guess it's going to be I find it interesting because both teams played against quarterbacks that arguably, or offenses that arguably self-destructed. I think the only person happier about the CJ Stroud news than New England fans was Buffalo fans, so everybody can forget about the 5 turnovers they had in the first half. Josh Allen didn't exactly cover, and the Bills, they didn't exactly cover themselves in glory. So, this may be a bit of, well, what happens when both teams face a team that wasn't trying to commit suicide on the road by, with quite so many turnovers and really bad weather conditions. So yeah, I'm really surprised about that, especially because Denver, even at that, they were playing the reigning MVP and just got by him. So I don't think that Drake May will be this year's MVP, but I'm really surprised to hear that the Masters are so strong on the Broncos here right now. God, it's a shame that FanDuel closed my fucking account.
All right, with that, we'll pivot over to the NFC Championship game. 2 of the consensus best teams in the league down the home stretch of the season, meeting for the 3rd time of the season with the Rams at the Seahawks. Adam, what opening price did you hang, and where's the market taking it so far?
Yeah, it's pretty much been at 2.5 There's sort of, people are buying it up and down. It's 2.5, it popped up at 3, went back. But this is really sort of -2.5, -20, or +3, -20, those kind of scenarios. Overall, it's about 64% of the money is on the Seahawks. The master chart is actually well balanced. And this is, again, the +3, +3.5 is getting a little action, -2.5, -2 is getting some as well. So a lot of them are sort of paying the price to come off that 3. I mean, Rams, this is the third game on the road. They just got past the Panthers, just get past the Bears. I don't know. Seahawks 2.5. I'm not really usually one sort of touting sides or getting too involved in this, but it feels like I definitely, if I have to pull the trigger on this game, I want to be on the home team, laying less than a field goal in this spot.
And when it comes to a line like this, 2.5 shaded heavily toward the 3, if I understand the math correctly, there is a roughly 10% probability this game will land on Seahawks by 3. How do you try to protect yourself from a scenario in which you're paying out all the Seahawks bets at -2.5 and refunding anything on the Rams +3 so that you don't get such a, possible one-sided outcome like that? Or is this just a case of, you hang the sharpest number you can, let the chips fall where they may, and if that's the outcome, so be it?
That's pretty much it. Let's take the bets, close your eyes, hope and pray that it just doesn't land on 3. These are the tough games, especially when you get to playoffs, because these numbers do actually really play tight to the numbers, especially a field goal, any kind of overtime, then you're really in danger and things like that. So it's really sort of, and now with all the ladders of pricings and, it's not, used to be one number. You got one number and that was it. And if there was one number, I'm pretty sure this one would be closer just sitting on 3 and that'd be it. But with the run of it, you have 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4, like they're just there. So now it's just a matter of pricing it up, hoping that you're pricing them up in certain spots. And then looking at where the money line is. Well, if you're getting heavy in that spot, maybe you want to take on the Rams on the money line a little bit and push that up and really drive a potential mitigating some risk through that methodology. But these days, and then live, listen, the amount of money that was done on live this weekend, those numbers change, flip, flop, or they're all over the place, they're up and down. You're going to end up with numbers that just horrific experiences, and then others that are just, it's part of the game now. So you don't get too wrapped up in the pregame like you would have 10 years ago when that was it. That was the end of it. That was your position. There's plenty of opportunities to sort of build a result or get out a result throughout the games now as well.
All right, so plenty of levers at your disposal to mitigate risk, but still I heard you praying for an outcome other than Seahawks by 3 at this point. Joe, what will you be rooting for and looking out for when it comes to the NFC title game?
I mean, this is an interesting one. You have the league's top scoring offense against the league's top scoring defense in this one. This is definitely strength on strength. I am very surprised that, the main line is still Seattle laying 2.5 at home. I mean, they got there. They came off the bye. Clearly, they didn't have any rust. It did help that they were just playing against the Niners, who had, let's say, how deep did they have to go into their practice squad in order to field a full team here this week? So I don't know that was necessarily indicative of what they do against a full strength team. But the one thing is, again, the Rams are on the road for the third straight weekend. They are getting banged up by playoff quality teams. They're just getting by the competition. You could argue that it's going to be a bit more temperate. The game should be a little faster. That should favor the offense. Maybe that's why, Seattle is only laying 2.5. The one thing I know is that at this point, the offense is slowing down and that it affects, the game after game, this kind of duration affects the offenses more than it affects the defenses. That's why they always say defense wins championships. It's easier to play defense in a championship situation when you're exhausted versus playing on offense in that. So, right now, I would probably be looking at Seattle. I would probably, though, I don't know. I always want to be humble and think, I don't know everything, which I clearly don't. And I would probably be one of those people who are waiting until in-game to get a read one way or the other.
All right, well, as you touch on defense winning championships, that reminds me, we have a championship game tonight in the college ranks. Miami hosting Indiana, as it turns out. Adam, if I am reading things correctly, we're seeing a bit of a late surge on the Hurricanes. The Hoosiers still laying a touch more than a touchdown. Where do things stand as of right now in terms of what you need from a bookmaker's perspective in the college football playoff championship game tonight?
I have no idea why this number's going down. It's definitely not money. I did feel like 8.5 was probably a bit high in the beginning of the week, and it did go 7.5 up to 8.5 and just coming back down. But it's 65% of the money's on Indiana, 58% of the master money, close to 90% of the money line money's on Indiana, 82% of the master money lines on Indiana. The money's on Indiana. We will need Miami for a foot. So when someone mentioned the game was dropping down to 7.5, 7 earlier today, I was expecting to come back and sort of see the charts sort of balanced up and more even, but it's not money. It's not money that we're seeing sort of coming in hard. It's not ticket volume. It's nothing. I do not know why this has gone from 8.5 to literally 7 now across the board, because it's not being driven by money through our pathways.
It's funny you say that. I think it's largely narrative. Obviously, there's been a lot of Indiana's been the team of the moment, the talk of the moment, and everything like that. But now we're getting down to game time. And I think this is probably in some ways a reflection of it's like, well, yeah, but they're still Indiana. And there's been a kind of note, even as they've been ascendant through the playoffs, been a note of like, but it's Indiana. Like, can they really close out this like dream season? Or are they going to get jacked by Miami? And Miami's a school that's won multiple national championships, and they've done it ugly. So I think that could be it, like just a note of caution.
Yeah, and the other aspect of it is Indiana can still win, can win by a touchdown, and Miami's going to cover. So that's where 8.5 did feel a little high with those narratives that we've seen sort of the whole way through. Again, Oregon was expected to go close. Alabama could have, Ohio. Like, they've just ran over everybody, and it's kind of Cinderella time, and is the glass slipper going to break and fall apart, or are they just going to crush this like they have been? So who knows, but we will need Miami.
I do not want to be in the weird position of rooting for Miami on our behalf. That would just offend my Notre Dame heart, but oh well.
Well, on that note, let's wrap this up with a quick round of predictions for the college football championship game kicking off shortly after this episode gets released. So, Adam, for the record, it sounds like you are pretty firmly in Indiana's camp, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly.
No, we need Miami as much as...
you need Miami, but it sounds like you're quite confident in Indiana not having any Miami money to justify the movement you've seen.
Miami by a touchdown. We're going for the money line. Ooh. We're going for the money line. We're going for the throat. We're going to win this game straight up. It's going to be a big start to the week.
Oh, my God.
All right. I stand corrected. Yeah, I thought last year Indiana was a nice story, but maybe a bit of a mirage. And they have proven to be a tidal wave based on the way they've dominated everybody up to this point. I've seen too much to go against them. So I will take the basic approach and figure Indiana probably wins this one somewhat comfortably. But Joe, I think last week you made the point not to crown Sig and the Hoosiers just yet. So what are you going to go on the record as predicting for this matchup?
Well, first of all, regarding Indiana last year, remember what they ran into. Notre Dame, who was conveniently left out of the playoff field here this year. So I guess they didn't want to get punched in the face by their in-state rivals. I have a nephew who's a freshman at Indiana University right now. I feel like I would be really making things even more uncomfortable than they normally are around the holiday dinner table if I did anything other than that. Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Adam on this one. There's something that says to me that, Miami, just because they have, so many national champions, that school has been in this situation before. Culture is something that you can point to and say, we've been here before. We've been the underdogs in a national championship game, overwhelming underdogs, and we've overcome. Whereas, Indiana's a nice story. It would also be a nice story for all of us here in Virginia because it would in some ways be the James Madison University National Championship with so many of our players from JMU having transferred to Indiana with SIG to get this thing rolling. But I don't know. I'd like to see Miami as spoilers on this thing. And if one of you guys can invite me to Thanksgiving dinner next year, since I won't have any place to go, I'd really appreciate it.
All right. Good note to end it on. As we close up shop, want to thank everybody for tuning in. Enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy Conference Championship Sunday across the NFL. And next week, when we know our Super Bowl 60 matchup, we will catch you right back here on Prime Suspects. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at @PrimeSuspects_, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.